It's IEP season. I'm doing an IEP overview. This is number one. I really wasn't. This is really my second attempt at doing this because YouTube had somehow determined that my first attempt at meeting notices and draft IEPs somehow broke their or violated the rules of um, anyway, I got that resolved, but in order to safeguard against the computer algorithm or whatever happened occurring that or having that happen again, I decided to just make another video. This one is about meeting notices and then draft copies of the IEP. Let's get to it. I got a lot to cover. So in this is an example of an Alabama meeting notice. They're all going to look the same because the IDEA requires specific things be included in an IDEA meeting notice for parents. So the only thing that's going to be different is what it looks like. And so an Alabama meeting notice looks like this. I'm going to show you an example of a meeting notice from another state that happens to have my daughter's name on it. But this is a good example so that you can sort of see that the same information is contained in both. This is what I'm saying. The IDEA mandates. It's just at the structure, the cosmetic, how the layout. It's all going to be different state to state. But the big thing to take away is that the big things that have to be in each of the meeting notices are going to be the same. And I'll show you why right now. They have to sit there and explain the purpose of the meeting. Now, I don't like Alabama's meeting notice because it is way too ambiguous and it ends up getting them in trouble. So smart school districts in Alabama should go through the extra effort to even use this empty space down here to go into further detail or greater detail in writing explaining what the purpose of the meeting is. I think this is the biggest one that gets Alabama school districts in trouble is this broad ambiguous term, review and revise IEP. I have too many families that feel like they got sideswiped walking into an IEP meeting and then having that turn into a change of placement or a reduction of services that the parents were unaware about. But because it's so ambiguous, school can get away with it. But what it ends up doing is those kind of things destroy trust. Those kind of things end up forcing parents into a situation of declaring stay put and calling somebody like me to intervene. It's just unnecessary. Over here, you have to invite or let the parent know who is invited from the school side. And then as the parents return the meeting notice, they'll be able to check the other boxes, including notating whoever else they're planning to invite to attend. This is not a one-sided document, okay? This is a document for both sides to contribute something to. The school is responsible for extending the invitation. It is your responsibility as a parent to fill out your portion of it, meaning that the date and time that this is good for you, that you can, and then who you're planning or who you need to invite. The people that have to be there is the local education agent, the general ed teacher, the special ed teacher, the parent, sometimes the student, and especially when the rights transfer to the students. But at the same time, everybody needs to use their reason as to the portions of the meeting that would prove beneficial for the students' involvement. And make it positive and then release them to go back to class before you start getting into let's say the deficits or some of the issues. I don't think it's appropriate for kids to listen to adult conversations about some of their deficits. So, but at a certain age, the school is mandated to send invitations to your student. But you as a parent have ultimate say on whether it's appropriate for them to participate. As far as 14 or above, they need to invite the career tech representative. Then you have other agency representatives for transition, like in Alabama, it's Alabama Rehabilitative Services. And then you also have, like I said, blank space for related service personnel, OT, speech language pathologists, behavior analysts, physical therapists. If any of those people are providing related services to your child. Let's say their name isn't marked on here when you get the meeting notice, but you believe that their participation would be valuable. You want to specifically discuss speech language or OT, then you need, once you get the meeting notice, you need to go through that extra step to check one of those boxes that are blank and write in occupational therapist or speech language pathologist. This is a two-person document, not a one-person document. Let's go down to the remainder. They're going to talk about, and as far as enclosure of your special education rights, they're required to provide you your special education rights one time a year. Typically, it happens during the annual IEP meeting, or if it's your first IEP meeting after your child's eligible, they have to provide it there. And so they have to have this statement in here, and whoever is the one providing the invitation. So this is your part as a parent. Please check one of the following boxes and return the Form 2 that you'll be able to meet, that you cannot meet at the date or time indicated, and please contact the school to arrange another time, or that you will not be able to attend and meet, that I will not be able to meet with you, and then I will contact you if I want more information. And then the other one, I give consent for the transition people to attend the meeting. But this is these three things. Let's discuss that right quick. Now, just because a school designates a time and a location doesn't necessarily mean that that's set in stone. All right. It has to work for your schedule. And so many times I have single mothers who have work schedules, and then the school just repeatedly ignores that the parent says, hey, I have Mondays off. And instead, Wednesday works for the school. And some of this is purposeful, and just some of it is just pure selfish ignorance, that I'm just not going to sit there and pay attention. Or maybe they don't understand that this is a collaborative process to schedule with the parent and identify a time that works for the parent. And because all of you on the school side are getting paid, please be cognizant of the financial circumstances that you put parents in when you set these meetings during work hours, when their children are at school, and especially if they're a one-income family. It means a huge difference in today's world as opposed to a tank of gas or coming to participate in their child's IEP meeting. And these are the realities that so many times people that work within this system of education, including myself, are not cognizant. We don't remind ourselves that we're putting immense pressure on families financially when we're scheduling these meetings. So please keep that in mind. But if you can't attend, if that time doesn't work for you, then it says, please contact me to arrange another time. See, this is what I don't like, because this is attempt number one to have you participate. And so all this empty space over here, guys, you can use it. Like I said, these are collaborative documents. And just because somebody at the State Department of Education in Alabama created this document doesn't mean that it's holy script that you can't write on. You can write on it. You should write on it. And what I think that you should write next to it, if you cannot attend, that you write next to it that this conflicts with a prior, let's say, medical appointment, or this date conflicts with my work schedule, and then right next to it, please provide me 3 alternative dates that I can choose from in order for me to have that work with my schedule. And I would write it on the form. This whole thing to where, please contact me on a separate line of communication. You can do that, guys, but I can sit there and tell you that you don't want to get into this he said, she said, or she said, she said situation. It's just better to use the official documents and communicate on those documents because, and I'll show you why. Because further down, there's a requirement on these where it says first attempt, second attempt, and see, in the law, it says after you've made at least two attempts to convince the parent to participate in the IEP meeting. See, that's the word that everybody overlooks, is the word convince, because I think that it says so much. See, an invitation is an invitation. If you're having to try to convince somebody to participate in an IEP meeting, that would mean that there's resistance. They don't want to. And there are times like that. Let's say the parents, and I've had clients like that, that understand that we're going to have that big talk about your child transitioning to a different school, or we're going to have that big talk as an IEP team about the fact that the current environment for your child might not be working. And so therefore there could be a potential change in placement ahead of you. In those situations, I frequently will have a parent try to duck out and ignore the meeting notices, thinking that somehow they can avoid the inevitable. And I just do not recommend you do that, because they can have the IEP meeting without you if they've shown documented proof of at least two attempts. And they're pretty flexible inside the law, guys, with regards to our hearing officers and judges as to what denotes two attempts. And that could be that they have a sticky note that says, I tried to call. There you go. There's evidence. And don't think for a second that I have not seen evidence entered into a due process hearing that just is a piece of paper with somebody's handwriting that says, I tried to call the house on this date and this time. Now you sit there and you say, well, how the hell do I know that you created this document on that day? Nobody knows, but it's evidence. So this is why I say use the document to document, and understand that even though the word is that they need to make two attempts to convince you. Now, if you write on the document that they are trying to schedule during times that simply do not work for your work schedule, then guys, you're not refusing to participate. They're not having to try to convince you. There's the difference. You're wanting to participate. They just repeatedly try to schedule at the worst possible times, and some of that is on purpose. But how do you safeguard yourself? You safeguard yourself by understanding that they are that using the right words, using the document, writing on all this empty space, that this time and date does not work for your work schedule, and that you, as a valuable member of the IEP team, I would write this, as a valuable member of the IEP team, I want to participate. Please provide me 3 alternative dates to choose from. And if you already know your schedule, then provide a window and dates where you are available. I'm available between 8 and noon on Mondays. Then at that point, you see you have safeguarded yourself, because they can't claim that they tried 2 attempts to convince you. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't try to sit there and run roughshod over you and misinterpret what attempts mean. And there are many, many school systems that they just, attempts to them mean that they half-ass it. They'll send you an email. They'll try to call you, well, whether you pick up or not, that's 2 attempts. And so I've seen schools do 2 attempts within a matter of 30 minutes. And then they feel justified in convening that IEP meeting without you. And you sit there and you go, well, they shouldn't have done that. Yes, they shouldn't have done that. But at the same time, safeguard yourself. There's going to be schools that violate the law all the time, either on purpose or out of ignorance. And it's not necessarily malintent, guys. It's just ignorance. Somebody trained them wrong. And that is a frequent area where they're trained incorrectly as far as interpreting the word convince. All right? You can safeguard yourself as a parent by filling out these forms when you receive them, and then also notating in writing, taking a camera image of that form before sending it back. Safeguarding, because what's the camera image? The camera image is going to tell exactly the date and the time that you took that picture. Documenting, that's evidence for you. If they somehow lose it, or if they somehow, and I've seen schools do this, trash the document and then create another document and try to sit there and pass it off as the original document. I've had schools go to the length of whiting out and then making a copy of that to where it's almost impossible to tell that they had whited out what the parents had notated on an IEP or a meeting notice. This is why it's important for you as a parent to safeguard yourself by snapping images on your phone and archiving it in order to show and verify that you wrote on these documents and that you are interested in participating. If you do run into a situation to where they participate or have the meeting without you, guys, this is evidence, but instead of complaining about it, this is where a perfect example would be a state complaint. A state complaint is different from a due process complaint. A state complaint is more appropriate for procedural violations, and that would be a big procedural violation. Potentially a procedural violation so bad and egregious that it ends up turning into what we call a substantive violation, because you as a parent have a right to full parental participation. And if it was simply an issue of work schedule that they refuse to acknowledge or work around, then at that point, you're not needing to be convinced. You're not refusing to go. They're not scheduling and they're not acknowledging your role as a parent as a valuable member of the IEP team. There's a huge difference between the two. But this is where you need to go through that extra step. This is getting long, but let me show you the similar for New Mexico. And as you can see here, same thing. Look at that. Second notice. They're inviting. They're providing the date and time down here. The same kind of qualifying information. See, invitation to participate on November 17th of 20. And then if you notice down here, there's your multiple attempts, okay? As far as the attempts to invite us to these meetings, they track it differently there. But those things are similar to Alabama, just the format is different. And also who is going to be invited, okay? Regular ed teacher, the LEA, the student, the transition specialist, or the transition agency, and the special ed teacher. All of these people were there. Okay, I know that added names, but all of these people were there. But as you can see, just like on the Alabama invitation, they have the very similar, or they have all of those requirements, just like the Alabama, just a different format that they follow. And you'll find that true with your state. But just like on this, there is plenty of empty space for me to write my response, whether or not that works for me, and to please reschedule. And then at that, we participated, there was no issue. But at the same time, if there was, that's how we would handle it. And then I would take a camera image to safeguard. And it safeguards everybody. It safeguards the special education staff, and it also safeguards the parent, because there's transparency, and everybody can see the line and flow of communication, so that no trickery or just happenstance or accidental misinterpretation can occur if you do it that way. I'm going to save the draft for a different video.